Thank you all. We will introduce this work we've been doing over the last year. I feel like it has been a collective work since many of you took part in it. And thank you for having us, let's say, and giving us the opportunity to do this. And also for having me here physically for the last month, spending some time in the City Science Lab. So we are a young team from Politecnico of Milan, as you can see, and we've been developing this work together also with Luis, Maggie, and Maitane, and we have interacted with many of you all over the network. I will start from a brief introduction, let's say, just to explain you why we are interested in studying the network, why we're interested in studying innovation processes. Then I will leave it to Luca to talk to you about the first part of our work, which focuses on the governance of the network and on the governance of the labs. Then we will have a brief chat to discuss this first part of the work, and then we will go on with the second part of the work, which is focused on impact management. And this is, let's say, the best practice we are proposing to you to adopt or to engage with in the next future. So let me start from this question. This was a question that Richard Nelson, a famous economist, sorry, I just need to close this. A famous economist from Columbia asked ourselves in 1974, and I think this is pretty contemporary, right? If we can land a man on the moon, why can we solve the problems of the ghetto? And in my team at Politecnico di Milano, we have been, let's say, moved by this question in the last years to investigate innovation trajectories, innovation patterns, and trying to understand why and how we can manage these innovation trajectories in a better way. This is a second thing that moved me over the last few years. This is Bocconi University back in Milan, where I'm teaching a course. Every day, every time I go there, I see this new campus, fancy campus. This is a construction that won few architectural awards in the last years. And then I see this huge line of people queuing in order to get a free meal because they cannot afford to provide their own food. So our question is, economy and innovation in the last year has been failing on many promises and has been, let's say, generating negative externalities, even in those cases where it started as a positive thing. Just to give you an example, in the last years, we have seen many purposeless innovations. We have invested huge amount of resources to develop innovations that at the end of the day, let's say, were not that useful to progress towards a better future. Two cases of this are the NFTs and the metaverse. We have seen innovations that started or that were conceptualized for good, then let's say turning out to be something negative. In the last example about cyberbullying and the surveillance capitalism is the one from let's say the current administration in US, where they started using data from Palantir, which is a public funded organization that was doing data intelligence for other purposes. They started using this data to track immigrants, illegal immigrants in US. And this is just one of the many examples we have of data misuse. The last one, but still really important issue that, let's say, moved us to investigate technology and innovation trajectory is are those innovations that started with an intention to do good, and then when they scaled, and so when they reached a certain diffusion, they became to generate negative externalities, what we call negative externalities. And so all this said, let's say our idea is to really try to manage innovation by minimizing negative externalities and maximizing positive impacts without limiting the space and incentives for innovation. This is a bit the challenge we have. This is the challenge we would like to help solving in the next future. And in order to do this, we are investigating 4 different topics that you see here on the right. And when we met years ago with City Science Lab and with your activity around the world and with the network, it was kind of an epiphany for me, because I said, oh, they are doing exactly what I'm interested in. They are exactly putting in practice collaborative innovation as a way to manage innovation trajectories towards public good. And so thanks to your availability, thanks to Luis and all of you, we were able over these years to investigate how you're doing that. And we started with 2 main focuses. We started investigating the governance, meaning how you manage, how you start these innovation processes in different contexts. And this is the first part we will talk to you about. And then we started investigating and trying to conceive an impact management and measurement model for the labs. These 2 research streams started as separate and I would say parallel research streams, but we always knew that at certain point they will converge and they will evolve in something, let's say, different, or in something in a unitary analysis, let's say. Let me start with the governance before leaving it to Luca to explain you the results of this effort. So how we conceive the City Science Network Labs, we frame them as niches, meaning experimental playgrounds where you try to experiment innovative solutions that challenge existing regimes. And we think that your work as a network is then converging to challenge the current landscape. So trying to shape new sustainable ways to live and interpret cities in a more sustainable way. What does this mean, and what does this entail? It entails, as you can see from the bottom of this figure, it entails experimenting in different directions. And we think this is really what you are doing in the labs, experimenting in different directions that sometimes may look like if they're not aligned in the same direction or towards the same scope, but then in a certain way, and this is what we really found interesting from your work, all these contributions or these little red arrows at the bottom of this figure are in a certain way converging towards a certain mission. And so we thought that this capacity to experiment in different contexts, this capacity to start researching and exploring even topics that are not immediately connected to the high-level vision, and then the capacity to align these efforts towards the higher-level vision was really interesting. And so we ask ourselves, sorry, I'm missing one slide here, but we ask ourselves, how are they doing this? Can we extrapolate any best practice from your way to manage the network? And so based on this, we started a research project, but I leave Luca to talk to you about this.
Thank you, Federico. I will start in this slide. You can see a bit how we developed our research path. We started with the secondary data collection, trying to understand, first of all, something about the network from a website, from articles, publications. Then we proceeded with a literature review, trying to understand the network as an entity. As an entity, we did a very broad literature review that I will explain deeper later. This literature review resulted in a first version of a research framework, which was co-defined with researchers from Boston's lab. And then it was used as the guideline for a first round of interviews, 10 interviews with the researchers in Boston. And after our first data analysis, we developed the second revised version of the research framework, which was then used for a second round of interviews with key people coming from all the labs around the world. And finally, a second data analysis resulted in the interpretation and validation, of course, participatory. We are now at this stage of validating and interpreting the final data, and the final outcome that we hope to complete in the following months are various types of publications. So this is a bit how the literature review was developed. We think that the City Science Network and the labs are very unique and peculiar entities, which share some characteristics with a wide range of organizations and collaborations. Finally, we ascribed the labs to social innovation ecosystems literature, but very particular type of social innovation ecosystems, because technologies and data play a big role. Although they are just tools, they play a big role. So we define them as tech-enabled social innovation ecosystems. And our research question is, which factors may enhance their governance, the governance of such tech-enabled social innovation ecosystems? In this slide, which some of you may be familiar with because it was the guide for the interviews, there is the first version of the research framework inspired by cross-sector collaborations and collaborative governance literature. As you can see, it's formed by 4 layers: the institutional environment, actors agency, tools and gears, and outcomes. Each layer is divided into different dimensions that guide the governance of the labs. Just giving a very brief overview, institutional environment concerns the immediate preconditions that lead to the formation of the collaborations of the lab. Then actors agency is related to the collaborative processes that the labs put into place. Tools and gears are all the technological, but not only technological infrastructures that the labs use to develop their projects. And last but not least, outcomes and then impacts are the changes that are generated on the communities in the long term. So in the next slide, there is a depiction of the final model where we represent the framework with all the relevant dimensions for the governance of the labs. Of course, we can't analyze all 14 dimensions, but we wanted to give you a brief example of how we developed our research. So in the following slides, we may see some of the dimensions. For example, here we have sociocultural and economic setup, a very interesting and relevant dimension that we discovered and is a bit different from the literature, from the first version of the research framework that we had developed. On the left, you can see a column with some evidence coming from the interviews. You may also see a phrase, a quote from your interview. And from this evidence, we translated the evidence into some lessons learned. For example, here we have the fact that there are no one-size-fits-all solutions. And then we extracted some best practices that we hope may be disseminated and may be adapted to each lab, a bit like already happens with the technology. We think that also methodologies and governance best practices may be shared across all the labs. In the next slide, we may also see another, let's say, in the bottom right, we can see also some suggestions for potential improvements. Something that maybe, for example, some labs may be already implementing, and some others no. And in this case, for example, we understood that citizens engagement and community engagement may be really important, maybe a source, an opportunity for some labs, but other labs still struggle with these dimensions for different reasons. And so also in this case, we think that, for example, best practices sharing and methodologies may be a very powerful tool for the governance of the labs. And similarly, in the next slides, we can get an overview, for example, of the funding model, and which was a very interesting dimension to analyze because multiple labs, let's say, express the necessity to develop more in detail business model, and also the desire to include and involve private actors in their activities, but also a lot of barriers and a lot of difficulties in doing so. So this is another potential improvement. And finally, in this case, we present local impacts, but it was very interesting to see this the presence of both local impacts, so on local communities, but also translocal impacts. So the fact that this dissemination is already into place, of course, so knowledge sharing is a priority in the formation of the labs, and so and how local impacts and translocal impacts may be managed and may be measured throughout the life cycle of labs.
Thank you, Luca. Thank you for your presentation. This is the first part of the research we are developing. So we want to collect impressions, feedbacks, and any reaction to this before going to the second part of it.
Well, I think the network is kind of shy, so I don't know if I mean I have many questions for all of you, but I think the most important one is like well, first of all, thank you for doing this and analyzing the network from a scientific point of view. I think that's quite important, and that's giving us some kind of you know, like support on the things that we are doing. We were doing this a little bit learning by doing, you know, a little bit MIT style, but now you are building helping us to build this structure and methodology. So I think that's super valuable. And so so far, I mean, like I think you have been using this academia methodologies, etc. But what was the most surprising thing that you found in a positive? Well, I don't want to point out into the negative way, but yeah, I mean, like you know, like in the positive and the challenging way as well. I mean, I don't know if you can answer that question so far, right?
Yeah. Well, I start, then I leave it to Luca and Elisa as well. But I think there are many interesting points that may seems, let's say, obvious for you, and also after being doing this for a long period, some of them may seem, you know, also for us, some of them started to be too clear, let's say, to be innovative aspects of it. But in reality, I think, having studied other forms of collaborations in the world, I think your approach, almost not everything, but many aspects of your approach are unique. For instance, you know, the attention that you are giving to communities, the capacity to empower communities to take their own decisions. For instance, that's something that is really unique for your work. Or the fact that you are giving so much attention to the spatial dimension of your labs, and to the openness of your labs to the community, to the dialogue with the community. All these aspects that may look like, you know, obvious for you because this is what you do, what you have been doing for 10 years. In reality, I think they're really unique, and it's worth sharing them with the rest of the world, you know.
Yeah, I think that Luis said it. I mean, we approached this from a learning by doing perspective. I think if this had been organized in Europe, we would have come up with a structure and a plan, and we would have gone out and implemented it. And we did not do that because every country has their unique funding mechanisms. Universities all have different needs. The people that we were interacting with who would take leadership all had different goals. And so rather than set a structure that we implemented, we decided to keep it very agile so we could respond to the unique conditions locally. But what I think, as you identified, what is common is a focus on community and this notion that we need to have a much more data-driven, evidence-based process of engaging with community, and that the good things happen, the best things happen, I think, when you have a top-down structure that meets, bottom-up opportunities created by local communities. So that's what's common, rather than the structure. And I think you did a good job of identifying that.
Mayra?
Hi. Thank you, Maitane. Hi, everyone. How are you? I'm happy, to be here today. I just want to thank for this work that Federico and the team are doing. Unfortunately, I didn't meet you before during the summit because, my colleagues from the lab in Guadalajara, they told me that you were doing this study regarding the collaboration and the network and how we are working, and we are trying to find these ways of collaboration as well between labs. And I didn't have the chance to know you before. And actually, this is the first time I'm getting in touch with this research that you are doing. And I feel like I'm kind of lost of what are you mapping, and the relationship with your research and our lab, and if you have already interviewed our colleagues, or if you need more information, or you are doing like researching from the documents and the information you already have from the labs. But we are open to have a strong or a deep conversation with you if you need more information. I actually wanted to let you know that we are in a process of making some adjustments in our lab and trying to strengthen our research laboratory. And this is going to be in the following weeks and months, that internally in our university structure, we are transforming the lab into a research center, which is called an institute, and it's a strong feature, no? And yes, and actually here today we have Sergio Roldan, which is with us. He is a new member of our lab. He will join us as the director of the laboratory, and I think we are going to have later another conversation to let you know what are these new adjustments and how we are focusing in, pursuing pues, our objectives of still working with the community and developing another kind of work and analysis in order to support the work we are doing, and also to get more financial resources. That is something that we have been working on that and worried in the last months, but we are actually working in that way also. So, and also, Ken, thank you for the letter that you provide us, because it's one of the strategies that now we're focusing and trying to look for these other sources of funding with the federal government. So we are working in that path. And the other thing is to work with the laboratories and having these conversations with the Bio Lab to work on with them for the next summit. And we are planning for some activities to do with the communities and to implement some short courses in order to strengthen the capacities of low-income communities by micro-credentials programs. So this is what we are going to present in the summit is a pilot, but we are eager that I'm confident that maybe this could be the beginning of a long-term collaboration also with that laboratory, and we would like to also expand this collaboration with other labs as well. So thank you so much. Sergio, I don't know if you would like to introduce yourself. I know you're here.
No,
Yeah.
thank you for the presentation, and good morning and good evening for everyone.
Mm.
No, I understand the responsibility for make a research about the cities. I am from Medellin City, and we build a work so hard with a dangerous city the last century. Now we go for every part of the world and speak about how is living Medellin in the 19th and the 18th, and how we build the new Medellin, the 5 trademark in the world. This is my experience, and this is the backstage for make a very good work in the City Science Laboratory in Guadalajara. Thank you, Bras. Thank you, Maya.
Thank you, Sergio, and welcome to the network. So I think, Federico, do you want to continue with the second part? Because I mean, I don't know if we are gonna be. We have a lot of time left. So
Sure.
and then we can, after your presentation, we can continue with the questions.
Yeah, thank you, Maitana. Maybe just clarifying the process to Myra. We had 20 interviews with people in the network. We are happy to talk with you, Myra, and to Sergio in the future, or as soon as you want. Let's say this is a process, an ongoing process. It's not still finished, and we are well aware that. There is not a model to be applied. It's just, every lab is continuously evolving. And this is why we're just trying to inductively extrapolate, let's say, best practices from the labs in the network to share them with the world and with you as well, so that you can kind of, see what the others have been doing and the principles that the others have been applying, and kind of reflect on those principles and those best practices. But let's say the fact that the labs are continuously evolving is let's say the acknowledgement where we started from, so we know perfectly that it's a continuous process of evolution, and that's we don't want to say this is how you should do things, but it's like, let's share what we have learned over these years, and let's see how we can share this knowledge among us.
Well, thank you. That's great. I think we will learn a lot from this comparative study that you are doing. Thank you.
Oh, moving to the second, let's say, focus of our research, we've been reflecting on impact management and measurement, and let's say our effort on this is to conceive a process that can support the labs in managing their own impact. I will leave the floor to Elisa, who has been working on this to explain it to you what we did and where we arrived in, as part of this effort. This is also still ongoing. Maybe it's a little less mature than the other part of the research. But yeah, we wanted to share it with you and to collect your feedback and your reactions about what we've been doing in the last months. Elisa, please, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Fede, and thank you all. Okay, so maybe just a quick introduction to make sure that you all know what we guys are doing. So with impact measurement and management, when we say impact, we refer to the long-term effects, whether positive or negative, that result from a project, from a partnership, or from an intervention into an outcome that can be social, environmental, or economic. And to measure and to manage these impacts is especially essential to understand whether this partnership or project are achieving their pre-intended goals. And so what works, why, also is very useful to potentially improve and to scale up successful intervention. Okay, but let's now go to the research path that we did until now and that we would like to do in the future, if possible. So firstly, we started by conducting a literature review. And by this literature review, I mean a lot of research stream that we'll see later on. From this literature review, we extracted some dimension and we created a framework of impact management and measurement. Then in order to validate this framework, we tested it in 2 phases. The first test was done on secondary sources of one of the labs, on one of the projects of the Hamburg lab that was Finding Places. And the second test instead, we performed it in San Sebastian with the Gipuzkoa lab, with which we did a participatory workshop. This test allowed us to gain some lessons and reflections, and we refined our framework after this. And we would like to keep this continuous learning process going, so to test it again, to share with you again the results, and potentially also to aggregate to all the labs. Next slide, please. Okay, thank you. This is a very broad overview of the literature review we conducted. So before asking ourselves the questions of how could impact be assessed into the network, we firstly had to define what the network was from a theoretic point of view. And actually we found out that it's a very complex concept, an aggregation of very multiple research streams. So I looked at how impact is assessed in all these streams, which is cross-sector collaboration, smart cities, open data, evidence-based policies, and public-private partnership. But after the literature review, we reflected also on which was the best approach for the unicity and for the specificity of the city science network. So for now, we stick to evaluating the single lab as a unit of analysis. And we did this as with the theory of change. The theory of change is a program theory instruments that we use to map the causal pathways that lead to a predetermined impact. So from the resources to the activities, to the outputs, to the outcomes, and to those impacts. However, in the future, we would like to integrate all those theory of changes of the different labs into a single tool that is able to evaluate and also to analyze the network as a unique entity. And we would be able to do this through another theory that is called the realist evaluation. Entering into the details of the model creation, in this slide you can see a representation of the main stakeholders involved within the network and how to each connection correspond actually an impact dimension. So, for example, in the middle of the slide, you see the City Science Lab, which is connected to mainly communities, institutions, the other networks lab, and the MIT City Science Group. The City Science Group is itself connected to all the labs and also has an influence from the local context of the single labs. So, for example, if we take local impact, we firstly defined this dimension from literature, and we adapted it to our case study, the City Science Network. So local impact is the dimension of value generation that concern the City Science Lab and the local community. So it would clearly entail many different things among the quality of life for the citizens' well-being, the social justice, or also the social cohesion of a city. And this impacts mapping was crucial to then let us to define our 5 steps process. This is our proposal of a process of impact management and measurement. And we intended to collaboratively involve the labs as a participatory and a co-creation tool almost. So we would start from framing the impact objectives of a lab, also including and analyzing how this objective might be connected to the local and to the global context of that region, for example. Then we go on into the second step, which is the stakeholder analysis, where we discuss and we map the different stakeholders for each lab. Then going on to step 3, the members collectively identify the impact dimension with the help of the map that we presented in the previous slide. And we identify the main relevant impact, and from those impacts, we go on to step 4, which is the design of a theory of change. So mapping from those impacts, which are the activities and the resources that we need to achieve them. Lastly, for each phase, there was actually a collection of evidence that, however, we consider optional in this very moment of the research. So in the next slide, you can see that we here represented which were the main outputs from the second test, so the Gipuzkoa workshop, to give you an idea of the activities that we performed here together with the lab. So for each phase of the process, the members were asked to fill in the different frameworks and tools that you see. And finally, coming to what we could call a first result, which is the theory of change of the Gipuzkoa lab. So this was, of course, as everything, participatory constructed, and we designed it from actually right to left. So we started from the previously identified impacts that the Gipuzkoa lab, in this case, wants to achieve. So it wants to increase territorial cohesion, reduce CO2 emissions, enhance economic development, and improve community-driven innovation. And we asked ourselves what is needed to achieve these impacts. So we go back to outcomes, to outputs, to activities, and to inputs. And in this sense, I think it is important to underline that this approach and this first final result is not only an ex-post exercise, so the measurement part, we say. It is clearly useful in the sense that the lab here has the opportunity to make sense of everything it has done until now to determine, to arrive to an impact. But also this theory of change might be very useful for planning and for future decision-making processes and tools. Indeed, for example, you can see here in green that we identified some blocks, some inputs, activities, and outputs that the lab is not currently doing, but that could be very useful to achieve and beneficial and instrumental also to achieve those impacts that we pre-identified. I'll give back the word to Fede.
Yeah, thank you, Elisa. And I think we can stop here. Maybe I would ask if they don't mind to Zulini and Giuseppe, who have been part, and Nele, I see Nele as well, and Inigo, they've been part of this process. So I don't know if you want to share something, or you want to share an impression and how you felt regarding that, and if that has been useful or... Yeah. And all of you, if you have reactions, of course, they're more than welcome.
Yes. Do any of you want to go on, Giuseppe, Inigo, or the rest, or Okay, so from my side, I want to thank you for the workshop. I think it was very insightful. It helped us to map the different agents in the collaboration and to, as you mentioned in the previous slide, to identify those activities that were already ongoing and followed like their path, and those that maybe we wanted to focus more into them. And it's been great to have this documented, because it was also the support to have this conversation internally, and yes, and to discuss around each of the points in a more formal way. We are also trying to introduce collaborative and anticipatory governance in the way we work. I'm happy because now that I saw the slide, I saw that we did some advances since then, and we introduced a couple of good practices, I think. And yeah, but still a lot to work on.
Thank you, Doreen. I'm really happy to hear that.
Okay. Mayra, yeah.
Yes, thank you. Federico, I have a question in terms of what are the following steps. So in this case that you are presenting from Guipúzcoa, that you performed a workshop there, are you trying to replicate this analysis in the whole network with all the labs? Because I know that that's something difficult in terms of having to travel here maybe, or no, to collect that information, or if there's a way or the methodology that we could implement here and, help you out with doing or performing this workshop by ourselves and sending you the results, or I don't know. So finding ways to try to analyze these elements similar in each of the labs in terms of having or cover the information from everyone. And also because it's very important to me to know this evolving process, mainly in those labs that have more time, like Andorra or Hamburg. They have been with the network for 10 years, but Guipúzcoa, Biobío are very recent, so they are conforming this in 2 or 3 years, these structures. And for our case, that we are in the middle, no, like 5 or 6 years, and we are learning from both sides. So what are you thinking about these next steps, and how can we contribute to this process? Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Mara. Thank you for your question. I think that's really an open discussion at the moment, so I'm not sure about the answer. We are, let's say, having today our workshop on this here in Cambridge with the team here. And the idea, let's say, would be for sure to share the methodology, and so to share this approach. And then when possible, as you said, it's not possible to replicate this in every lab for traveling issues, but when possible, it would be to engage with the labs, and do this. But I think we're really discussing this. So I leave it to Ken, Maggie, Luis, and the team to let's say to answer your question problem more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I would maybe ask Myra's question slightly differently. So now that you've completed the analysis of the current state of the network, which is celebrating the 10th anniversary this year, what are your recommendations for how we could strengthen and grow the network over the next 10 years?
Thank you again. That's a difficult question to answer always, but
of course it is.
We've been discussing a bit also in Maggie, Luis, and Maitane about this. We think there are, let's say, certain directions that can be interesting to explore. For instance, the network level is really interesting, you know, strengthening the connection between the labs, and in different ways. That could be for sure a way to improve it, in the sense that we see that you have created such a value by linking all these labs, and by, let's say, fostering the creation of the network around the world. And now that these values there, maybe it can be in a certain way exploited positively, you know. So you can kind of leverage on what you have created to really amplify the value of the network. That's one way. And we had several ideas that, but I feel like we are still discussing that. So I feel like yeah, we're still in the process of conceiving them. And then the impact management also, we think it can be, let's say, our proposition to you as a network, as a good practice to be implemented. I see the risk here to, let's say, limit the freedom or the flexibility that the network has and that research requires. But this is exactly where we started from. And so what we did is trying to conceive a model that is more about making people more conscious of the impact they want to generate and how they can generate it, instead of measuring what has been done and, you know, setting impact objectives and then blindly pursue those objectives. So thanks to the interaction with the team, we really embrace this perspective of not limiting the research freedom, not limiting the flexibility that the network has and the labs have, which is, in our mind, one of the best things, let's say, you have been able to manage over this year. So yeah, but let's say these two are the main 2 points, I would say.
Federico, I had a thought. As Kent is asking this question and we're having this meeting of bringing everyone together, I know that, you know, Kent is thinking about this all the time. I know a bunch of folks on the MIT team are, and you are as well. And today we'll spend a little bit of time of knowledge gathering from the MIT side, but it would be really cool to also be asking this question to the network, you know, in an opportunity when there's more time to engage with everyone, these questions of what should it be and what's next and how would it grow. I think there will be a lot of responses to that are very, you know, unique and different, but a lot that are aligned also. And then I'd also would love to see more. I know you're working on documentation of your work in research, and there's so much. We've seen more of it. We haven't seen all of it, but there's so much work that you've done and that you've collected from the interviews. So I think when you get to that point and there's a way to share that with all the city science labs of what's happened so far, and these people could really go in depth in different angles or in different metrics that they're interested in and learn more from that, that will also, I think, be really important to sort of launch us to a next step. More work to do, maybe.
Yeah.
And limited time together, but I think, you know, when we have time together, really making use of it, and then having some conversations in parallel too with the different network nodes.
I totally agree. I think, as Maggie and Kent are saying, I mean, we can learn a lot from the work that you already have done, and we should keep extracting a little bit from that and building on top of that. In parallel, I know that you have a research group that the goal is, you know, keep understanding about networks. So in my opinion, it could be fantastic if you could get some kind of funding on your side or something where we could keep somehow having you as somehow as a, you know, as a let's say third party looking into the health of the network and giving us some, you know, advice, etc. Being able to have meetings. Like, I think Mayra was like, shoot, I missed the opportunity to be part of this. So I love that. And I think we should offer the network the opportunity to have these kind of workshops with you and figure out how can we make this a good practice. I think that's kind of like something that I mean, it's a win-win for both sides. Let's figure out what is the low-hanging fruit of this. I think without being a distraction, I think that's the main important thing. Like so everybody's busy and we don't wanna. But after seeing the reaction from Mayra, I was like, okay, looks like at least I mean they're part of the network that they are excited about being part of in a deeper kind of way. So I think that could be fantastic. Like figure out a plan where this is not becoming a distraction, but it's becoming something kind of like a strength for the network, and we can somehow learn and in parallel grow together your methodology and how we do things without putting constraints. I think learn by doing is our way of doing things. But I don't know. I mean, I'm talking maybe for Ken and Maggie, but I would love to figure out a way that, yeah, in a smooth way, the network can benefit from this work because it's fantastic.
Yeah. Also, I was thinking that maybe we can take the summit, that since everyone is going to be there, maybe we can find some time to do like a little workshop or something with Federico and the team, and I don't know, and see what's coming from there. Marcus, do you want to say something before we finish?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think one challenge that I've always kind of had is that there's a lot of independent research going on, but I do think that the network could benefit from alignments along certain kind of problems, because a lot of our research is driven by a challenge, right? So whether it's global warming, whether it's safety and security, whether it's access to amenities and services, whether it's, increased housing. So like these themes that resonate across labs sometimes get lost in the work and research, like the way of building or collective organization around some of these major urban themes. Like we're not all, sometimes I feel like we're sometimes operating in a vacuum. There isn't enough connectivity across macro problems. And a lot of that has to do with the technologies that we're using, because, different data sets, different access to information. But that would be, to me, like organizing workshops around themes that are resonating in different labs might be a way of creating more collective intelligence across the network. That's all. It was just an observation that I have noticed. But I mean, I'm excited about this afternoon. Federico, be careful.
It's 11 a.m.
I know. I'm on my way to the lab. I got a shot last night. Give me a break.
Yeah, having you excited is a great thing. Yeah.
Okay, so we are right on time. Thank you, Federico. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Luca, for your work, for everything that you are doing for us. Thank you, everyone, for attending the meeting. Maggie just shared a conference that is happening right now in Hamburg about urban digital twins. If you are interested, you can join, I think, by Zoom. There is also like a link for more information. So I think I'm going to share it again, maybe in WhatsApp for the people that are not here. And yeah, I think we'll see you all again in a month or so for the next meeting where BioBio will be presenting. So thank you, everyone, for coming. See you soon.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. See you all. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.